Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. It's about dropping behavior with Elemy Yeme and Monica Harding. My name's Lauren Perry, and I'm Operations Manager at Syngap Research Fund. And I just want to remind you the webinar will be recorded and available on our website at curesyngap1.org/webinars later, about in a week or so. And I'm going to let Monica take it away and introduce herself and Elemy.
Hi, good morning. I'm super excited to be here. Jackson is our 19-year-old Syngapian and was a professional dropper at one point. And thankfully, Elemy really took over and showed us what we really needed to do to prevent him from dropping. I am going to introduce her. Elemy is a board certified behavioral analyst and the founder of EY Behavioral Services, a behavioral therapy practice based in San Diego. Over the years, Elemy has helped hundreds of families overcome their child's most challenging behaviors. She's worked with children with autism, developmental disabilities, genetic disorders, and even parents whose children don't have a diagnosis but still struggle with behaviors. Her mission is simple: to give parents the tools and strategies to stop feeling powerless and finally take back control, so their child can thrive and the family unit can experience a more fulfilling life. Elemy, welcome.
Thank you, Monica. That is me. So we'll just get started right away. Thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to talk about this behavior. Like Monica said, we really struggled there for a little bit, and we really overcame it and got to really good results. So I'm really excited to talk to you about that dropping behavior. In this session, I will walk you through how to understand dropping behavior better and kind of like stop feeling at a loss when that happens. I know it can be very frustrating and overwhelming when these situations happen because you're suddenly just left there being like, what do I do now, right? So today I'm going to help you navigate these situations with more confidence, and we're going to cover a simple, proven process to overcome your child's dropping behaviors without the power struggles, without the frustration or feeling stuck. We're also going to go over the 6 biggest reasons behind every child's dropping behavior. We're going to go over a step-by-step walkthrough of exactly how to handle dropping behaviors in the moment, and also how to prevent dropping behavior before it starts, so you're not always kind of like playing catch up. My goal for you today is that you can walk away feeling more in control of these situations and to give you some actionable steps to go from this to this. A little clip of that. Does that sound good to you guys? Thumbs up. Awesome. Okay. So I guess the first question, or let's start with just seeing if you guys have ever found yourself feeling like stuck when your child drops to the ground, like, and they don't want to move. You feel like you don't know what to do. You can't move them. Have you ever felt that way? I know, Monica, you have, Lauren, probably, and the rest of you guys. So that's exactly what we'll go over today. We're going to talk about the things you should know about dropping behavior so you no longer feel frustrated, helpless, and stuck when this happens. The first thing that we need to do is actually define what's actually happening. We need to define what dropping behavior is so we can understand it. So, excuse me, what is dropping behavior? Dropping is when a child intentionally drops to the ground, often as a way of avoiding something. It could be a demand, a task, or even an emotional trigger. And while it's a behavior that many of you have experienced, the reasons behind it can vary. It's very important to understand the reasons behind it because your approach to handling the behavior will change depending on why that is happening in that moment. So I'll tell you a story. I worked with a kiddo a while back who would drop to the ground whenever he didn't want to do something. And I'm not talking about like a quick flap and recover right away. He would stay on the ground for like 30 minutes up to 2 hours at a time. And after carefully observing the behavior, we noticed a pattern. He was more likely to drop for longer periods of time when he was constipated. So, yes, he was avoiding a task. The trigger for that behavior was avoidance of the task. But the real reason behind that avoidance was that he was uncomfortable. So, instead of just focusing on getting him up, the parents changed how they approached tasks during the times that he seemed physically uncomfortable. And they stopped assuming that the behavior was just defiance. They looked deeper at what he actually needed. Once they factor in his constipation and made these small changes, the dropping behavior significantly improved. This is why understanding the why is so important, because again, your response will change depending on the root cause of why that's happening in that moment. And then when you shift your approach and focus to the real reason behind the behavior, you really can help your child succeed in ways that you maybe never thought it was possible. So, I want to introduce you to a simple, proven process to overcome your child's dropping behaviors without the power struggles, without the frustration, and without feeling stuck. It's assess, manage, and prevent. Assess, identify why the behavior is happening, manage, respond in the moment effectively, and prevent, reduce the likelihood of it happening again. So, let's go into step one, assessing the behavior. Before you can respond effectively, you need to understand the behavior and why it's happening in the first place. This is the foundation for everything that comes next. If you don't know the root cause, every strategy you try will feel like trial and error, and you'll find yourself in the same cycle of frustration with like no meaningful progress. So when you understand why your child is engaging in that dropping behavior, you'll be able to choose the right response and prevent future issues. This is exactly why we dive into the 6 strategies, we're going to break down how you can assess the why behind your child's behavior so that every step that you take moving forward is targeted and actually effective. So I want us to start with asking yourself these questions. Is my child overwhelmed? Are they avoiding a difficult task, or do they want access to something preferred? To figure this out, you have to step back and observe the environment. Look for patterns in what's happening before the dropping behavior starts. We want to know what triggered it and what's happening around the environment, what's happening around the child, who is around them. Is there a common theme each time this happens? Understanding these patterns actually give you a clear insight into why the behavior is happening, which again is key to choosing the right response. Now, let's break down the 6 biggest reasons behind every child's dropping behaviors. The first one is sensory overload. Many children with developmental disabilities struggle with sensory processing. If there is too much noise, light, movement, stimulation, they may drop to the ground as a way to escape the overwhelming environment. This is especially true for kids with Syngap who have sensory processing challenges. Even though it may not seem like it on the surface, it is probably a reason playing a role. Reason number 2 is avoiding demands. This is probably the most common reason kids drop to the ground, or at least is the most obvious one. Sometimes the task or demand might feel too hard, too overwhelming, or just something they don't want to do. For kids, dropping becomes their way of saying, I don't want to do this, and you literally can't move me. And as I am sure some of you already know, the older and bigger they get, the harder this behavior is to manage. So we'll talk a little bit about how to prevent this later on. But reason number 3 is emotional distress. Sometimes big emotions trigger dropping as a way to withdraw from the situation. A child might drop when they're frustrated, anxious, or overwhelmed in a particular situation. For example, the client I mentioned earlier would drop to the ground when entering new places. It wasn't just about avoiding the demand of going into the place. It was more about the fact that it was overwhelming and he felt anxious. So he dropped to the ground as a way to cope and avoid that situation altogether. In these cases, the best that we can do is support their emotions first before we do anything else. Reason number 4 is communication challenges. For some kids, dropping is their way of communicating. If they have trouble expressing their needs, they might drop to the ground to communicate frustration, confusion, discomfort. And so, if your child struggles with communication, we probably need to teach them different ways to express themselves other than dropping. Reason number 5 is seeking access to something preferred. This happens when a child wants something but isn't sure when or if they'll get it. So, for example, a client I had in the past loved escalators and elevators, and I know a lot of Syngap kiddos do too. At first, the family avoided these places because they knew that they would trigger dropping, but avoiding them wasn't teaching him a better way to navigate those situations. So instead, the family learned to show him that he could get access to those things and places he loved so much, but in a way that it was predictable and structured. So we set clear expectations and reinforce appropriate behaviors. And once he understood that he would get access to those things, transitions became a lot easier. And then reason number 6 is seeking attention. Some kids drop because they've learned it gets attention. If dropping has worked in the past to get a reaction, they might do it again. And this doesn't mean that they're being manipulative of like attention seeking in a bad way. It just simply means that they have learned when I do this, I get attention. So the key here is to redirect their attention in a positive way. Okay, now before I move into the next step, there is something very important to remember. Behavior rarely happens for one reason. I'll give you an example. When you eat, you do it for 2 reasons: to stop hunger and to enjoy the food. The same is true for dropping or any other behavior. It's usually a mix of multiple reasons, and we need to look at all of those and identify the appropriate approach in that particular moment. Again, it helps you understand the right approach to handle the behavior more effectively. Okay, so now that you understand that understanding the cause of your child's behavior is super important and how to find that cause, we'll jump into the step-by-step walkthrough of exactly how to handle dropping behaviors in the moment, which is the manage step. This part is the one that parents struggle the most with, because when it's already happened, they just feel stuck. Like, what do I do? What's next? He's already on the ground. By following this step-by-step approach, you'll know exactly how to respond calmly, effectively, and we'll go from there. So let's break it down. The first step is to stay calm and regulated. I know that this is a lot easier said than done, but trust me, staying calm is one of the most powerful tools you have when handling dropping behaviors. When your child drops to the ground, they're probably feeling overwhelmed by big emotions. So if you respond with frustration or urgency, it can actually make things worse because they sense that frustration and they sense that urgency. That's why step 1 is always to remain calm. And here's why. When your child takes emotional cues from you. So if you stay calm, they're more likely to follow. Calm energy equals faster regulation. When you model control, you show them how to regain theirs. And then also, escalation really fuels escalation. If you react with urgency or frustration, they're likely to do the same. So next time this happens, I recommend that you pause, take a deep breath, and really lead with calm energy. Your response sets the tone to how they react and how they walk through that moment. The second step is to ensure safety. Before you do anything else, make sure that your child is safe, especially if they've dropped in a potentially dangerous location like a parking lot, a sidewalk, or an aisle in a store. To do this, you want to block any dangerous items by putting yourself between your child and the danger. So, for example, if they drop near a road, stand between them and traffic. If it is absolutely necessary and actually feasible for you to relocate them to a safer spot, then do so to keep them safe. But it is really important to know that if your child is already in a safe spot or not like life or death danger, to not physically move them. Moving them too soon can escalate emotions and actually prolong the behavior. You attempting to move them is the equivalent of like your spouse or your significant other telling you to calm down when you're feeling angry or frustrated. It just doesn't work that way. We need to allow that space. So now that you're calm and your child is physically in a safe location, we really need to focus on helping them regulate and de escalate their emotions. At this stage, your child is probably still too overwhelmed to follow instructions. So you might feel like everything you say or do actually is making things worse. And to be honest, it probably is, because again, they're not regulated. At this stage, we need to focus on regulation by limiting the triggers and modeling calm behaviors so that they can mirror that calm energy. You can do that by keeping your facial expression soft, your body language relaxed, shoulders down, remembering to not show that sense of urgency of like, come on, stand up, and avoid reacting emotionally altogether. Stay close, but don't force engagement. And instead of talking or giving directions, just be present. It's really important at this stage to avoid physically moving them, to give any demands, or talking too much. Any of these will only retrigger your child and prolong the situation. Now, it's important here to remember that the time to teach your child how not to drop in public is before it happens, not in the moment. And I know that you're probably thinking, well, that's frustrating. If I can teach them in the moment, how do I stop them from dropping in the future? I'll get into how to do that. But right now, it's very important to remember that when dropping has already happened, our focus should solely be on coming out of that dropping, not on teaching. Okay. So after you've helped them de-escalate their emotions, it is time to relocate them to a more appropriate spot. Once your child starts showing signs that they are ready, you can begin helping them to transition out of the dropping episode. And you will know that they are ready when they stop crying or yelling, when they make more eye contact, when they make more attempts at drawing attention, they turn their body towards you, they shift their focus away from the trigger, and they allow you to be closer or allow light touch in their body. At this stage, you have to be very careful because parents often make the mistake of rushing because it seems like maybe the kid is ready, but they're not fully ready yet. That makes the child retract. So don't rush into the transition fully when they're starting to show those signs. Instead, what you want to do is start small by encouraging them to move their body slowly. For example, you can go from laying to sitting, or sitting to scooching, and then slowly sitting them somewhere more appropriate. So to do this, you can identify a small incentive or reward to motivate them. So for example, you can show them a preferred video on your phone, but not fully play it. You can just kind of like show them, see if they're interested, or a small treat, something that you can use for motivation so that after that you can pair it with a small direction. So for example, I have a little video and I'm like, great, let's sit on the bench and watch this video. And that's how I would pair that motivator with a simple direction. Now, step number 5 is to engage and motivate. At this point, your child is much calmer, they're more open to engagement, and they're more likely to follow instructions. This is really where you rebuild that connection and create motivation for transitioning fully. And how you know that they're ready to engage is because they start communicating with you in whatever mode of communication that they have. They make eye contact, they seem more present, more with you, and less worried about the trigger. They respond positively to triggers like smiling, high fives, or silliness. They kind of like come back to their bodies. So, what you can do at this stage is use the current interest to spark their motivation. So for example, when my client was on the ground and he was ready to engage, he would want me to say something or talk about something that he really liked. So I would say something like, "Oh my gosh, escalators at the mall? I love it. Stand up. Let's talk about it." And then that's how I paired that motivation or him wanting to talk to me to get him to follow an instruction and move on into the next step. And I want to show you a little clip of some of these strategies. Please know that there is a lot of context missing in this little clip. There's a lot of things that happen before and a lot of things that happen after. But I really want to show you in practice what some of these strategies look like. Hi, guys.
Ba, ba, ba.
He's talking.
Hey. Ah.
Hi, I said something, he responded. I know there is some motivation there. He allows light touch there. He's looking at me, he's smiling, and then I use that small motivator to see if he wants it without showing him.
Yeah, stand up.
And then I give the direction and then we move on. That's what that looks like, all of those strategies. And then we go in. Again, there's a lot of context that goes before and after this, but just wanted to show you how those strategies, what they look like. So anyways, once you follow the steps to manage the behavior and your child is now engaging in the right response, like in this video, we already got him up and he's walking. In other situations, it could be that they sat in a more appropriate place, they started transitioning away, or they engaged with you in a more positive way. Now comes the most important part of this whole process, reinforcement. We have to make sure that we praise them immediately for making the right choice, even if it's a small step in the right direction. I know this video doesn't show it, but I promise you, we threw a party the moment that he walked into the door. So this is very important because the more that you reinforce the positive behavior, the more likely that they are to repeat it in the future. Even a small effort to engage is a step in the right direction. So we really want to be intentional about catching them doing the right thing and reinforcing it. Okay, so now that we've covered how to manage dropping when it happens and how to get unstuck, let's talk about something even more important than that, which is how to prevent the dropping behavior before it even starts, so you're not always kind of like playing catch up. Prevention is really the best tool that you have and that I can offer. I often say that if the child is already on the ground, we are too late. So here's how you set up your child for success before dropping even starts. First, you can set clear routines and expectations. Children thrive on predictability. If they know what's coming next, they feel more in control and less likely to drop. So to do this, you can use visual schedules, verbal reminders to tell them what's coming next. You want to give clear, simple instructions ahead of time. Use countdowns or cues. So for example, in 5 minutes, we're going to leave the park. After this video, we're putting shoes on. A strategy that I always use with my Syngap patients is a lot of priming. Remember, we're going to do this, and then we're going to do that. This is what I expect you to do. Do you understand? And I repeat that a lot so that they have that consistency and expectation at all times. The next thing that we want to do is, instead of avoiding difficult situations, we want to use graduated exposure. If certain situations are triggering dropping, it can be really tempting to avoid them altogether. But the thing is that avoidance doesn't teach the right behavior. How are we supposed to expect them to behave in an appropriate way if they're never given the opportunity to do so? So instead, we want to gradually expose your child to difficult situations in small, manageable steps and reinforce the behavior along the way. So, for example, if your child drops when entering a store, start by practicing walking to the door right before they drop and going back to the car. Every time you avoid the drop, you get closer and closer to the ultimate behavior that you want to see each time. Even if it's just one step and you walk right back to the car, that's better than the dropping because we're preventing that from happening. Okay. Another thing that we can do is create a supportive environment. Think about what makes dropping more likely to happen, and then adjust the environment to support that, to support your child in that way. So, for example, you can make sensory accommodations. So if your child is sensitive to noise canceling headphones, or providing a quiet space to regroup. Providing regular movement breaks, it helps reduce frustration and helps the body regulate physiologically. And the most important one, I think, is to reduce the known triggers. If you know that your child always drops at a certain spot or in a certain situation, plan for it ahead of time. So if your child drops in long lines, for example, find a place for them to sit before the behavior happens. I remember Monica and I, and to this day, if we're doing difficult outings, we will bring a little stool that we can carry with us so that we can prevent that dropping from happening. I'd rather him in a stool in an appropriate way than him dropping to the ground in an inappropriate place. So if they drop at the mall entrance, practice standing at the entrance just a few seconds before walking in if you can, or if not, you can just retract altogether. And then, as always with our kiddos, the biggest secret, not so secret, to success is consistency. Being consistent is super important. Every time you use these strategies, you're helping your child learn to handle the world in healthier ways. So set routines, give predictable transitions, expose them gradually, and teach them the appropriate responses. Support their sensory needs, and then teach coping strategies by showing them how to appropriately cope with those situations. So, just to wrap up today, I'm going to go over a simple framework once again, just to kind of summarize: assess, manage, and prevent. Assess why the behavior is happening. Manage the moment with calm, step-by-step guidance, and prevent dropping by setting up your child for success. If you keep these tools in your back pocket, you'll feel more empowered to handle dropping behavior as it comes. And the best part is that if you truly focus on prevention, you'll reduce the chances of it happening in the first place. And I think that wraps it up. If you want to know more helpful tips and insight, you can join our free newsletter. We share every week step-by-step guides on different challenging behaviors. You can follow the QR code or go to our website at eybehavioralservices.com/newsletter. And that's it. I would love to open up the floor for questions.
Thank you so much, Elemy. Yeah, if anybody has questions, you can put them in the chat or in the Q&A, I guess, down here, and I'll check on Facebook. You can ask them on Facebook too.
Oh, okay.
Or I'll let you know if there's any in there. That was really good, though. It's really helpful. What do you do? I have a question. When, I mean, you kind of covered this, but like, he'll drop, but he'll be really escalated and smacking his head, and it's like impossible. Like, I guess it's sort of like just a waiting game, like waiting for him to calm down and then trying to pull him out of the drop. Or he'll be grabbing. It's just, I don't know. What would you do? Like, whatever, for whatever reason, he doesn't want to move. So he's laying on a mat or something and won't get up. And then he wants to do something that he's not being allowed to do. And then, everybody's hovering around him. I'm like, everybody step back. Number one, this is too many people around this kid, and then, but then he's more escalated, hitting his head. It's just like, I guess, waiting, or what would you do? I guess. I'm sure you have
Yeah,
more questions.
great question. I love that you mentioned that you make everybody step back. First step for sure. That's even just the presence of multiple people. It adds to that overstimulation. So removing all of those stimuli and those like triggers is a great idea. If he's already on the ground and he's starting to engage in that SIB, I would actually drop to the ground with him and get at his eye level and just reinforce that you understand him. I would just say things like, I hear you.
Mhm.
I understand. I know you're upset. I know you want to do this. And then follow the steps of what we talked about, of like trying to find that motivation to see if that will stop. But in that moment when he is so
Mhm.
escalated, engaging in that self-injurious behavior, his body is out of control. So we want to help him regain that control in his body by showing him how to regulate. So really staying calm, showing him, if he allows you to touch him at all, just come in kind of like close. And it would probably be somebody who he really trusts. So in this case, I assume would be you, or somebody who he has a really close relationship with.
It's good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever recommend, I saw someone at his school doing this yesterday. Like, I think she's using his talker, like for him, sort of like trying to get him to say like what's next. It was a little weird. I don't know what you're doing, but she's holding his talk. She does not know Will yet because he just started at this new school. So
Mm-hmm.
but she's like, have this talker, and then she's saying, we're going to the bathroom or whatever. And Will's just like, no. And I don't know if it's a good idea. Like speech therapy usually says no, but it's nice to model when it's appropriate. But I don't feel like modeling while he's in like a behavior or whatever is probably the best idea because I could tell it was irritating him more. Like,
For
what are you
sure.
doing?
I mean, it
Yeah.
sounds like, it sounds to him like a demand, right? I think that there is,
Right.
this is why it's so important, going back to what I talked about of why the behavior happens in the first place, and that there's usually multiple reasons why a behavior happens, kind of like when you eat to enjoy the food and avoid hunger. There are multiple things playing a role in that, and it's important that the person that is working with him or who is with him, that they identify when is the right moment for that. In that case, I
Yeah.
would say modeling language is not appropriate, because that model can seem like a demand, which is triggering that
Yeah.
behavior, right? So
Hmm.
if I'm trying to get him to go to the bathroom and I know that the bathroom could be a challenging demand, then I wouldn't even deliver the demand of going to the bathroom, because I know that's the trigger. I would probably just be like, oh, here, I have my reinforcer, right? Like I establish motivation, and I would start
Hmm.
slow. Okay, give me a high five, stand up, walk 3 steps. Oh, touch the
Okay.
light. Oh, you're in the bathroom. Let's go to the bathroom.
Right.
That's how I would go
That's
about it.
perfect. Yeah. Okay. All right, cool. Thanks,
Mhm.
Elmy. There are three questions now, so
Okay.
I can read Anna's if you want. We'll just start at the top. She says, what do you do when your child's dysregulation makes you dysregulated? Which is a really good question.
Oh, yes. It's a very, very good question. Like I said, it's easier said than done, but it's definitely the first step, learning how to regulate yourself. I think that it's important that you experience, identify what works for you. It's different for each person, whether you need to take a moment, take a deep breath, just step out from this situation. If you can, of course, if there's somebody else there, like really identifying. I would ask this question, like, what helps me regulate in those situations where I feel very dysregulated? Do I need a walk? Do I need to talk to somebody? Whatever that is, because it's so cliche, but you cannot put the mask on somebody else if you don't have it first. So it's really important that you regulate yourself, because they feed off of your emotion. If you show that you're worried, that you're fearful, that you're like, oh my gosh, why are you doing this? They feel that and they heighten that state in themselves. So again, I would just ask myself that question, like, what helps me regulate to make sure that when that happens, I feel regulated too.
Um, okay, the next one. Can you talk a little bit more about the process of exposing the child to highly preferred items like elevators and helping them cope with the desire to gain access to that preferred item?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Kind of like I mentioned, just the example of like getting the bathroom demand going and how you would go into small little steps, it would be the same process. So for example, if your child really loves elevators, and he probably knows where all the elevators are in all of the malls and everywhere where they're at, we would prep him prior to. I would start with a social story or something similar, like, this is what's going to happen, we're going to go to the elevator, here are the expectations, and just repeat that story over and over again. I would also practice at home, like, hey, let's pretend we're going to the elevator, show me how you walk in and show me how you walk out. Oh, we're going to the elevator, how do you walk in, how do you walk out? And then once you get to that place, I would follow the small, manageable, graduated exposure that I talked about. Before they drop or before they like escalate over gaining access, I would just practice. Okay, let's get out of the car and walk 2 steps and walk back. Let's get out of the car, walk 5 steps and walk back. Okay, let's go touch the elevator. What you want to show them is that you're not removing them, that there is the possibility of it happening again. So the moment that they realize that, okay, I take 2 steps, but I can come back again and again and again. And I would just take some time, like pick a time with your providers or your family members that you're actually going to try this. Over time, they realize that they can't come back. And so you just go small little steps to get there. That makes sense?
Definitely.
Awesome.
Okay, so Carrie, she's asking, how do you stop a drop in a situation when you must move to a non-preferred item, like the bus? Like stop it before, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Same way, really just small, manageable steps. Like I remember when we used to support Jackson to get on the bus, and we started our attempts to get him to not drop literally like in the house, like 20 feet behind. And we would go like, okay, move to this chair, sit in this chair. Great. Now walk to this chair that is closer to the door. Once he was like outside of the door, we would put a chair 2 steps in front of it and be like, okay, you just have to walk to this chair. And that's kind of like how you prevent it. You really have to go really small, manageable steps. Like, how do you break down this skill of me having to get up, do something that I don't want to do, walk all the way across this room, across the house, through the door, through my driveway and into the bus. All of those steps, you can break them down into small little ones that you can just request that one little part. And that's how I would target that.
Good. There's one from April on Facebook. She says, our daughter often likes to pretend she's sick or in pain when she drops. Any ideas on how to determine if she's really not hurting or if something is actually wrong? That's a good question.
Um,
Tricky.
I would say that if you guys know your children best, like if you have the feeling that is really not truly, that sounds to me that is maybe a little bit for like that attention more than anything. If there's something off, like I would just watch. If you really want to know if she's truly sick or not, I would just watch for those cues. You probably, as a parent who are so in tune with your children, will be able to tell if something is wrong. Other than that, it's probably attention, and we want to manage it accordingly. We don't want to stop the attention, but we want to redirect it positively. So give her the attention, but then try to again go back to the motivation and see if you can get her to engage in the appropriate response, which is like getting up or not dropping, and then give her all the attention that she needs or she wants for that.
Will does that same thing. He does this. He's like, he points to his stomach. I'm like, there's nothing going on with your stomach. But he's gotten so used to everybody being, is something wrong? Is it your stomach? And then he thinks, oh, yeah, and then he's gonna get out of it. And April, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
When April responded, she said they don't ignore her discomfort, but she will point to several places and say ouch or pretend to compensate, just like Will. I mean, he does the same thing.
Yeah. And I think,
Yeah.
like, correct me if I'm wrong, Lauren, but you would be able, like, if something was wrong his stomach, you would see other changes in his body.
Right.
It wouldn't be like the, hey, look, it would be more of like a hunched demeanor. You can see other
Yeah.
cues that are related to him actually being in discomfort, which you would be like, okay, you would attend right away. So I think that if you don't see any
Mhm.
of the other cues, that is probably an attention seeking reason. And we just need to
Mhm.
be positive.
It's good. Olga just sent a message over text. We're on everything here. She says, she would like Elemy to comment on prac. Oh, I think it's parts. I don't know if she means practical functional assessment. It's PFA SBT.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, practice functional assessment. Okay, just
What
comment on it. I don't know. What about it?
about
Can you hear us, Olga?
Well, the practical functional assessment is developed by Dr. Greg Canley. It
Oh,
is basically a modality to deal with very challenging behaviors in very like small manageable steps.
mhm.
Just like any, it's very successful. He's been able to really show in a lot of studies how successful that um, program is, and he basically bases everything on keeping the child happy, relaxed, and engaged. We don't want to stress the child. We don't want to dysregulate their nervous system. It's all about connection, and all that. We used it with our Syngap patients. Syngap kiddos are very smart. They learn the way, and so we had to modify it more than multiple times to just like kind of like shape the line, because with dropping particularly, like if you let some of our Syngap kiddos literally drop to the ground and like never shower, they might never actually shower. So
Mhm.
we kind of like had to find ways to overcome that. But what specifically about that program for dropping behavior? I'm not sure about that.
Olga, you can go ahead. Mhm.
Sorry, my apologies. I'm just coming in on the end here. I was just asking about it in general. It seems like that our ABA team has done a 360 and I guess resorted to this particular program. I'm not sure that how long a child should be doing this. I mean, yes, Drew's very, very smart. He knows how to pretty much rule the roost, which, I don't feel like that needs to be uh, enfor- enforced at school.
Yeah.
And I see a comment here that it was not successful for another child, but I will talk to that parent. Thank you, Monica. Okay, so I just didn't know what your take was on it with Syngap in general, with your experience with your client and Syngap. I mean, I just think, are they grasping at straws here? Are they not looking at the right things? Are they?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. I do have to say that's a great program. It really is. I've been trained in it. I'm certified. I love it. I love Dr. Hanley's work. I follow it. I found it that for my Syngap patients, I've had to modify that program because they are not strict autism. There's a lot of other variables that we are considering with Syngap. And just like I mentioned throughout my presentation, I gave different examples for different reasons for the behavior. They were all for the same child. So you can see how multifaceted the behaviors can be due to the how multifaceted Syngap is. So it's not necessarily that they are wrong. I think that they are probably looking in the right places. They're going to need more than that in terms of like analysis and really individualizing it and crafting it so that it works for your child, because your child has very unique needs based on the diagnosis alone.
Thank you. Okay,
Yeah.
that's very, very helpful, Amy. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Mhm. Oh, let me see. If anybody has anything else?
I just wanted to interject here with Elemy being Jackson's BCBA for all these years. We've gone through many BCBAs, PhD doctors have come in. And her plan has totally been customized to Jackson and Syngap. You know, we did ABA therapy for years up until age 10, until we got that Syngap diagnosis. And there wasn't a single BCBA that was successful. So her plan has been completely customized to Jackson's needs. And I think that's where a lot of ABA therapists or BCBAs are like, yeah, your child's, you know, not therapizable or can't be therapized, or the therapy is not going to work. And I don't think it's not true. It's very untrue. We've come such a long way, especially with dropping with Jackson. I mean, he was not accepted into 2 non-public schools going from grade 8 to 9 because he was dropping. You know, that's when they're learning to transition, to go out in the community, to whether they're in a job placement program as they graduate. And because he was such a liability, or he needed so much attention when he dropped because it became unsafe, they're like, we're sorry, we can't accept him. And at that point, I'm like, okay, we're in trouble here. And we really needed to get things under control. And it's now all about prevention. And I can say Jackson being, you know, as large as he is compared to us, it's like we go out there. I can go out there by myself. I can do the escalators, and that was that was avoidable to all costs, even, you know, driving in that direction. And with her tools, we've been able to succeed and overcome and be out there in community where we should be, right? So
Yeah, wow,
it's powerful.
amazing. Olga, do you have another? What's happening?
Virginia just chimed in.
Okay.
How do we find
Virginia.
therapists?
How do we find the right therapist? That's a great question.
That
A
is
lot
a
of them.
great, that
We
is a
have already
great,
trained them.
that is definitely a great question. I would recommend that you ask questions, kind of like if you were to, you know, just like when you go and find a job and they ask you questions, you ask them questions. It's the same way for therapists. Like, I'm pretty sure, which I can see if I can send to you, Lauren or Monica. We have a list of like questions to ask before you start with a new therapist, in terms of like, you want to ask about what's their philosophy to treatment, what is their approach, what does it look like, what do they focus on, so that you can evaluate if that's the right fit for your child. And every practice has different practices and different approaches, and what you want to do is find the right approach for your child. So asking the right questions and really just analyzing if they have what you think is required for your child.
Great. Let's see if any more. Another Q&A. Here we go. Do you consult or share the Syngap plan?
I do
With
consult. I'm
others.
not, yeah, I'm not sure that it's a Syngap plan that I have, but I definitely offer consultation services. If you are interested, you can go to our website, and it will walk you through whether you want to schedule a call with us and what services we can offer. I've consulted with many Syngap patients, parents, BCBAs alike. We have packages and different services. So if you go to our website, you'll find or a way to schedule a call for a consultation. Okay. It looks like Lauren had to sign off.
Okay.
But does anybody else have any questions? I don't think so, right, Monica?
I guess not.
I was going to interject. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
It's Olga. I'm so sorry. I wanted, on your consultation, do you consult with other BCBAs or just the parents or?
Yeah, we can do BCBAs if you have a team, or the parents if you're interested in, learning more about how we handle it and to teach you, kind of like what Monica was explaining. We have different consultation packages. So again, if you go to our website, you can schedule yourself for a call, and then we can go from there based on your needs and what you're looking for.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Elemy, I just want to thank you for being here for our family and the entire Syngap community. I know how isolating our world can be, and to have a professional perspective is, and a person who really cares about our quality of life is ever changing. So I truly appreciate what you've done for us and what you continue to do for our community. So thank you.
Of course, it is my pleasure, as always. And yeah.
And I look forward to more adventures with you, because this is just beginning at age 19. It hasn't stopped. Clearly, there's always another hurdle to overcome, right?
For sure, for sure. I'm always excited to see what's next for our guy.
Yeah, sure. I know you live for that. As not so much on my side, but I always know it's okay. I got to take this one to Elemy and get her perspective. So it's always great working with you. So I really appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys being so committed and wonderful to work with. So thank you.
And if I can just put another plug in there, this is ABA therapy, or Elemy's approach. It's a family approach. Her session coming in, it's just not her and Jackson, or she and Jackson. It's a family affair. We've learned and had to learn the techniques, or we wouldn't be so successful, and it wouldn't be so transferable, that instructional control. So I encourage parents to be involved and to learn as much as you can, because you're the ticket to your kid's success once that BCBA leaves the door. So it's practice, practice, practice.
Yeah, true.
Okay, I think we're set.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you so much, everybody, and I will see you later, but I'll see everybody next time.
Okay, thanks, Elemy.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.